also.
Not only
more about gel coat.
When the fourth round would...
Don't you call in the... More importantly, he knew what he was talking about.
Oh, does it look good already? Okay.
Jumbo Scampi for limited.
All for a price that will make you...
How the hell am I supposed to pay?
This is Rick Simpson, and you're listening to People for People Radio, the voice of truth in Scotland.
Okay. Hi there. I guess we're live. My name is Jerry, and you guys know me on the chat as Ulinsley77. And I just want to thank everybody at People for People Radio for your great shows that I've been enjoying. And I came over from Wolf Spirit Radio a couple months ago, I think. And I've been really enjoying the shows, and every once in a while I hear people talking about their health issues, and I keep thinking, oh, I want to get on and share some information that I have, because you guys are just all such awesome people and doing such amazing work that, we all deserve to be feeling good. And as you know, part of the problem is the medicine, or so-called medicine, that people have been taking and getting used to going into hospitals and doctors and stuff and getting all messed up. Just, same way we're getting messed up with a lot of other things in our culture, keeping us sick and confused and not feeling our greatest. And so I really appreciate the opportunity to come on the show with this show and just tell you a little bit about myself. I have been practicing natural medicine and healing since I was really young. As a child, I used to heal animals. And I have a few stories maybe I'll tell over time about that. But so as I grew older, I thought I wanted to be a nurse or a doctor or something. But then I realized that I really didn't resonate with that whole system. And so when I was 17, I bought a acupressure book and some herb books, and I started teaching myself on my own and just practicing on friends and that kind of thing. And so time went by, and later on in life, I ended up going to acupuncture school. It was kind of a miracle in itself. I was a single mom, pretty destitute, with no money, and I had a therapist, a counselor at the time, who had me do this little ceremony. Well, not a little one. It was one that took 90 days every single day to attract money for a big project that you want. And so if you forgot one day, then you had to start all over. And so I was really destitute at the time, and it seemed like completely out of the question that I could ever afford to go to acupuncture school. So anyhow, I think I went about 7 days, and then I forgot, and then I started up again doing that little ceremony every day where you put some money aside and you just think about all what you want to do with this money that you want to attract, and you think about the amount that you need. And so it was a really interesting process, because as I every day went by, I had this little box that I would put the change from the day into, and just thinking about why I want this money to come. And so I would I would think about, I just realized that the thoughts that were coming into my head were really negative, or really like dissing myself or my own strong feelings of what I wanted to do, which was to help people feel healthy in a natural way. And so And I also wanted a license to practice basically magic, because Chinese medicine it's amazing. Magic to me is about changing reality using, our will or our intention, our thoughts, and our desires for a certain outcome. And so I had been going to acupuncture myself for a long time, for years, and it really helped with so many things. Long list of stuff going on with me back then. And so anyhow, then I think I went another 13 days on that little ceremony that I was doing, and I forgot again. And so I started over, and I did the whole 90 days, every single day, putting this money into a box and thinking about what I wanted to do with it. And it was really interesting to watch my thoughts. Because at first I had these thoughts of, who do you think you are? There's so many people out there that are starving, or, don't have a home, or, all these thoughts, like, kind of putting myself down, because they were my thoughts. And slowly over time, over those 90 days, I started realizing that, wait a second, I do have good intentions, and I have a really strong gift that I want to develop and share with the world and make money doing it. So over time, the thoughts started becoming more and more helpful as far as my, getting closer to being able to go to acupuncture school and to afford the tuition and to pay for, just living expenses and stuff. So it was a really huge lesson for me in the power of thoughts and a power of creating our own reality, because I was like so destitute that Father wasn't helping me with my child and stuff. So I started really working on loving myself and believing that I deserve to have comfort in my life and to develop my gifts to a point where I can share them with other people and make a living at the same time. Like, I deserved to make enough money to live off of something that I love to do. And so it was really cool. It just, by the time I was done with this ceremony and the 90 days, I was having these visions of when I would go into the meditation part of it, where I was doing like acupuncture treatments, like putting needles into the sky, into the stars. And I was receiving these showers of abundance and the amount of money that I needed and the amount of money that was needed to live on. And it was just, it would be showering down on me and from the stars. It was really cool. Long story short, I ended up, somebody decided that they were going to lend me the money to go to school, because back then, that was 20 years ago, there was no financial aid or anything like that for acupuncture schools. Now there is. So it was a really great way to start off my career, because I had to put so much time and energy into making it happen. And so, I was the only person in my school who was it seemed like most of the people in the school had a lot of money, and it was relatively easy for them. I had a little kid and a little 5-year-old boy, and things were not easy. It wasn't easy, but I did it, and I got through, and I'm practicing. So I've been practicing Chinese medicine for 20 years. And it's pretty much all I do for money. And I live in a really rural area in Northern California. So I'm kind of like a country doctor. So anyhow, it feels really good to be on this show with you guys, because in a way, I've looked around at a bunch of different radio shows, and some of them seem so big and like it's too complicated. I'm not very good on the computer, as you probably realize. So anyhow, I'm really grateful that Gaz invited me on, and Lizzie has been so kind to offer to jump on the call if things get a little uncomfortable or something. So this is my very first show, my very first time doing a radio show. So yeah, thanks you all for being here. So what I was thinking, I don't know if you read the little bio that I put on the site, but what I want this show to be about is what I focused on in my practice is food. Because even in, this 20 years that I've been doing Chinese medicine, which is a complete medical system within itself, I treat all kinds of people. And unfortunately here in the United States, thanks Lizzie, in the United States, we can't even use the word treat because the AMA owns that word. So I can say things like, I help people with this problem or that problem. So if I accidentally say treat, I didn't mean that. So I can't get sued, hopefully. Anyhow, so I see a lot of different people with different severities of issues. And over just in the last 10 or even 5 years, things have gotten so much worse. The difficulty of the illnesses coming in and younger people is just, it had me baffled. Like I was like, how can I treat people with these little needles? They're out there. I realized that people, have been sold a huge bill of lies, a packet of lies in our lives about health. And so through this show, I'd like to go through the different layers of basically lies that we've been told about so many different things regarding our health. And one of them, a big one, is food. And so that's kind of what I've focused on a lot, and lifestyle. Lifestyle suggestions for living in good relation with the seasons. And so as the seasons go by, I just had someone come in Friday, and it's, 30 degrees, 40 degrees here. And she walked in with this little skimpy dress on with a really light sweater. And I got to, it's almost every day I have to lecture people about, wearing coats and or socks or, in the cold weather. So there's really simple things. People are at different places. So in their relationship to their health. And I think that maybe in Europe, people are more sort of connected to their ancestral wisdom about, simple things like dressing properly in the seasons. But here in America, it seems like people, we have gotten, there's been a huge push to pull us away from our traditions. From the traditions that were passed down through our grandmothers, our grandfathers, and families. So everybody just kind of wants to jump on this crazy corporate bandwagon of taking different, I don't know if we want to do that, but it's something that's happened where people just get used to really easy, like having heat and taking antibiotics if you get sick and that kind of thing. And so we see the effects of that is to wear down people's immune systems, and then they start getting worse and worse ailments as time goes by. So there's the food aspect, there's the clothing aspect. I see people with babies all the time who the parents are all dressed up and warm with hats on and stuff, and the baby has no coat or no hat or no shoes in the wintertime. So, just really simple things that they can be like, don't eat candy bars when you have a cold. But, I know I that kind of thing, I'm not, you guys are probably, I know you're way on a good road. It sounds like a lot of people are into healthy lifestyles. And so, so another thing is I want to encourage people, if you have questions or comments that you want me to hear or talk about, anytime you could, if it's appropriate or it seems like it's on the track of what we're talking about, And I think Lizzie said she'd help me with those questions. I don't really know how this system works too good, so gonna just have to bear with me on that one. So living in through the seasons, healthy with food. Let's see. Oh, and the whole EMF thing. It seems like a lot of people are talking about that on the different shows. So I do have some stuff to add about that, about the EMFs, because one of the things, I think that the EMF problem is probably the EMFs in the food, I would say, is, I don't know, the chemtrails. There's so many things. But the EMFs is maybe the most important issue for people to look at these days as far as their health is concerned. Because, you can't see it, you can't smell it, you can't hear it. Most people can't feel it. I can feel it. There's times I feel I can walk through pools of energy, and I can't go to real big meetings and stuff because of all the people with cell phones and the LED lights and stuff. So that's a huge thing that I'm trying to really get through to people about. It's really hard. I've had so many people with cancer and just recently dying of cancer, which I never used to have before. And, they have their Wi-Fi router in their bedroom, those handheld phones and stuff, which are even worse than the cell phones. And they're all like, well, I've had it in my room for years. I'm fine. I'm like, well, you're dying of cancer, so get it out of your room. So that is another really big piece that I work with people. Anyhow, let's see. Got a little cheat sheet of notes here to go along. Okay, so I'm gonna just start talking a little bit about food and about the gut. One of the things that so we have, just with the advent of industrial food, basically, most people are eating food that's not really even food. We call it, in the United States, we call it this SAD diet. It's a standard American diet. And it is really sad because of just all the chemicals and the GMOs and the bad oils, that are in foods, and even food that's not really even food, is a standard part of most people's diets, I would say. Asking people to look at labels is kind of a first step, and then I, of course, try to get them to stop buying stuff that have labels, so start cooking your own food. So that's one of the mechanisms that, whoever those, I call them the Chitahuris. That's a name that is from Credo Mutuo. If anybody's seen that video, there's a really good 6-hour interview with this Zulu elder. He's a historian named Credo Mutuo. It's a David Icke interview. And it's really amazing. But he calls the whole, the Anunnaki, the controllers over kind of people that were left here supposedly in control of us, the Chitahuris. And so that's who I call, that's when I say them, I mean the Chitahuris, that's who they are, the controlling people who have lied to us and tried to get us to do all these things to weaken us and to take, our manhood and womanhood, or take away our liveliness and our health in so many different ways. And so the show I'm going to be working on here with you guys is about how to address, in our own lives, the food issue and the health issue just in our own worlds. So one of the things that I remember Jordan Maxwell, I think it was him, the other day on his interview on the People for People, he was saying, somebody asked him, do you think that we're going to have a chance of stopping all this crazy stuff that's happening. And he goes, well, actually, no. I think that we can only do things about ourselves. And so I do think that we can change things out there, but I also think that it's really important to change things right here in our own homes. And so part of the way that they have taken power over our culture is to take away the power of men and women living in harmony together and doing things together, and men picking up their part of what they can do and women doing what they do, like women cooking, So there must have been billions of dollars put into advertising and, products development, for men pick women to not have to cook anymore. Like, oh, we got rid of this drudgery of having to be in the kitchen, and we can be out there working for money instead and paying somebody else for our poison food. So anyhow, so part of that is looking at that, like, okay, you got all this time where some of my patients are retired. They're in such bad health, and when I start talking to them about cooking their own food, they're like, well, that takes so much time. And I'm like, well, what else are you doing with your time? You might as well start investing in your health and getting back to some really basic, and it's actually they're in such bad health, and ways and when I start talking to them about cooking their own food, the convenient food and the easy way, which is not really easy, because if you look at the big picture and how sick people are getting, some really a lot of it from the foods that we're eating, or the non-foods, pretend food, it's not that easy to stay sick like that. And so, let's see, I'm going to just get a little sip of tea here. So I wanted to talk about the wisdom of grandmothers in the kitchen. I do a talk I kind of do this certain talk about food, and some of them I tailor to sort of more spiritual groups. And so I talk about the grandmothers and the fact that I was so fortunate to have two grandmothers in my life who were living. I knew them personally. They were my biological grandmothers who totally loved me, and I still feel them supporting me, even though they've crossed over. But I just want to share that love of being in the kitchen and taking care of each other with you all, because I feel like it was a huge gift that I got from my grandmothers. And so I just want to send that out right now to everybody, of that love of the kitchen, of the food, and how to help each other be healthy and nourished in a good way. And I had one grandmother that was from Mexico, and she was an amazing cook. She was very well known for her food. I never ever saw her open up a can. Everything she cooked was fresh, and she used lots of butter and lard. And oh man, her kitchen, you walked in there and you just smelled the food, and it was like, okay, there's no problems in the world right now. So, I just feel like that's part of it, is that feeling that we get when we're nourishing ourselves and nourishing our families and friends with really good food. And the thing about the kind of food that I talk about, the traditional foods, basically foods that our ancestors ate, that food actually ends up being way more tasty and delicious than the food that we think tastes good, that they use MSG on or other chemicals to actually physically open the taste buds up. That's what they do. They open up the pores on your taste buds, so it makes it seem like there's more flavor in it, but really it's not. It's just a bunch of chemicals like MSG and different kinds of flavorings that they put in food that, you can make taste good just by cooking it right. And people ask me sometimes, I'll give them a little sip of my soup if they come into my office and I'm eating lunch or something. I'll give them a little bowl of soup or something. And they're always so surprised. What do you put in here? How do you make this taste so good? And I was like, oh, just some salt. Basically, I used really good salt. So you guys are over there in Scotland and England and stuff, so you have access to that really delicious Celtic sea salt. That's the kind of salt I recommend. And it's kind of one of the first places I start with people is the salt. Because part of the big package of lies that we got sold was to stay away from salt. And salt is, really important for our bodies. We cannot live without salt. It causes heart problems, diabetes, all kinds of stuff. When doctors tell us to stay away from salt, it's basically the sodium chloride that gets produced for factories. So about 97% of the salt that's produced in the world is produced for mechanics, like factories. And so they take all the minerals out of the salt that will clog up machines. And whatever's left over, that's sodium chloride. And then they sell the rest of it on the market as table salt. And that stuff is really, really dangerous for you. You can Google it and look that up. I don't really want to get into all that, but it's super dangerous, the sodium chloride. So, I prefer the Celtic sea salt. To me, it tastes the best. It makes really good broth and really good, the food just tastes way better. It's got all the minerals in there still. And so then I guess there's the Himalayan salt that people use. But I don't know. I've read different things about that. I do have it at home, and I'll use it if I need some real fine salt. I'll use the Himalayan powder, more fine salt. But I've heard that it could possibly have rust in it. And another sort of one of the exopolitics guys that I listen to sometimes was saying that it has some kind of gas that gets built up inside of the earth, and it gets imbued into the Himalayan or salt that's in the earth. So he didn't recommend any salt that comes out of the earth to be eaten because it has this certain... I'll look it up to make sure I have it on hand if somebody wants to know. But anyhow, so I don't know if I believe that or not, but I did hear that from someone who seemed like he knows a lot of stuff. So anyway, so yeah, salt is one of the first places that I work with people because it's pretty easy. And what I do is I buy big, huge bags, like 75 pounds of Celtic sea salt, and I just bag it up into 2-pound bags, and I have it in my office, and I have people buy it from me, so they can just get started on that. That's what I do first thing is get rid of that other salt and start using this stuff. And then the second thing that I do with people is oils and fat. They're probably both equally as important. So the other piece of the big lie that we've been sold about food is, the lie about animal fats and heart healthy oils and stuff like canola oil and all, any kind of vegetable oil should not be cooked with, not even olive oil. So, I use olive oil for making mayonnaise, and I make salad dressings out of them and stuff. But any kind of vegetable oil, if it's heated up, it's going to make, it causes heart disease, bottom line. And it gets really rancid really fast, and it could cause cancer. It's really, really dangerous. It is so dangerous. I mean, they're trying to kill us. There is a really good video that you can watch online. It's called The Oiling of America. And it's pretty long, and it's a lecture. And it talks all about cooking oils in America. And it's, to me, I'm kind of a nerd, so it was really interesting. But, her bottom line at the end of the whole talk was like, why are they doing this? I don't know why this stuff is even legal. It is so dangerous and so toxic to be eating these factory oils that are just everywhere in the supermarkets. You walk in and there's just aisles and aisles and aisles of vegetable oil. It's, So her bottom line was like, I don't know why they're doing it. Maybe it's genocide. I don't know. I was really shocked to hear her say that, because she's like super professional, and it's a great talk. But, I think that, is it? Are they trying to kill us from every angle they can think of? And this is like the internal angle, and we're paying for it. We're buying all this stuff. So they're on that movie, The Oiling of America. She shows a photograph of a molecule of canola oil, and it looks like a ninja star. There's like blades on the outside of the cell of the molecule, and so when that oil gets into your system, it's like hacking up your system. It hacks up your arteries and stuff. So they're like blaming all this heart disease and arterial sclerosis and stuff on animal fats, lard and butter and stuff. They've totally demonized this traditional fats that our grandmothers used, and great grandmothers, and way back, and introduced these factory oils. And it's a huge on that movie. She goes through, there's slides of the process of making canola oil or some other kinds of oils, corn oil and stuff. But I mean, there's probably like 15 to 20 different steps in a factory of, hydrolyzing and like super high pressure and lots of heat and deodorizing, and because when it comes out, it smells so bad that they have to put it through a deodorizing system so you can even handle being around it. And if you look at, and then it's expensive, you have to pay for it. But the foods, like the fats that our grandmothers used, are butter and lard and chicken fat, drippings and duck fat, things that, are just made through whatever else they were cooking. They just set the fat aside, and they would use that in things that needed some fat. And it's turning out that, hey, what do you know? Those fats are actually really healthy for you. They have high amounts of vitamin D in them, vitamin C. There's a huge... So I'll be going through some of this. We can focus in on some of these things in the different shows. And, we can do stuff like look at heart disease and see, talk about different kinds of what the food protocol and lifestyle, suggestions would be for people with heart disease or cancer or mental health on down the line. And so... let's see. Oh yeah, and so the fats, it's so easy to take out. Like, you make some bacon or something, or fry some, or roast a chicken, and there's the fat right there. You don't need to throw it away. Put it in a little jar and stick it in the fridge, and use that to fry your potatoes, or do your stir fries, or put it in your bread, or whatever it is you need the fat for. Use the stuff that comes out of your other foods. You don't have to pay for it. So, some people think it's about money, making money from these things, but the more I look at it, I don't even think it's about money anymore. I think it's that other agenda. But anyhow, yeah, let's see. So then there's this soy thing. There's pretty much soy in everything you can imagine. Any kind of processed foods probably has soy in it. That's probably a whole talk and at least an hour. So basically, I'll just tell you guys, just stop eating soy. Oh, coconut oil for cooking. Okay, oh, cool, thank you. That was cool, I just saw that on the screen. Coconut oil for cooking. Yeah, people say it's okay, and it probably is okay. Personally, I can't stand the taste of coconut oil in cooking. It just, I can't stand it. I don't mind it in baking, but frying and stuff like that, I just don't like it. So I tend to listen to people who live in cultures that use those oils a lot, or those, whatever the food is. So when I was in Mexico, I go to Colima a lot, and there's a lot of coconut trees down there. So every day, my friends are like, "What do you want to do?" And I want a fresh coconut. So we go down and get a green coconut, and they chop the top off, and then they pour the milk or the juice, the water into a glass and drink that. It's so delicious. But I asked them about using coconut oil in cooking, and they said, their ancestors, the old people, would always tell them, if you cook coconut oil, you kill it. So that was one person. I didn't really do a lot of research into that, but that was one guy who was really into coconuts. He told me that. So I thought, well, maybe that's why I really don't like the taste of coconuts being cooked. So, from what the scientific standpoint, there's been studies done that it doesn't get toxic like other vegetable oils do if you heat it up. So it's pretty safe as far as that goes. So if you like the taste of it and you want to cook with it, it's probably okay. Yeah, so the unfortunate thing is, when you go out to eat, everybody these days is using canola oil or soy oil to fry stuff in. So all your delicious fish and chips and stuff. I wish I could find, I like to, when I travel, I like to Google ahead of time and find out who's still cooking with lard or tallow or something. Because there are some places in Mexico, there's a lot of people still using lard. In fact, in that movie, she talks about they're spending billions of, like the most amount of money for advertising right now is in Mexico, because the Mexicans are still the last ones to really be the last stronghold of still using lard, and lots of butter and stuff. So it's not funny, but there are a lot of people that, I go up to the taco stands down there or the restaurants, and I ask them, I'm like, what kind of oil do you use? And some of them, they get all happy and they pull out their big bottle of vegetable oil. Oh, we're using vegetable oil. I just go, no. So anyhow, but there is still people who say, no, we're still using lard, because every good Mexican cook knows if, your refried beans have got to be made with lard. Otherwise, they are not, nobody's going to eat them. So anyhow. Hey, thanks, Lizzie. She just sent me a little note. Anyway, I think I was getting into soy there. Let's take another sip of tea here. So soy. Yeah, when I was young, young adult, we were kind of the generation of people that got the whole soy thing targeted at us. So I don't even know where to start with that. It's just so insidious. Soy was touted as being healthy for breast cancer people with breast cancer and all different kinds of cancers, hormone problems. Well, when I was young, I probably did eat a lot of soy. I ate tofu and, all kinds of weird stuff, But I realized that when I was eating a lot of soy, I started feeling worse. Like my menstrual cycles got way worse, and I started having way worse, just problems. And so I stopped eating it. But I think it did some damage in me, really, over time. Soy was touted as like a miracle for feeding the massive amounts of population in the world. It's overgrown and, but really there's just so many things wrong with soy. It's like endocrine disruptor. What's this say? Hormonal problems. Yep. Like I guess vitamin B12 is not absorbed if you have a lot of soy in your body. You're using a lot of soy because even though there's vitamin B12 in soy, it's not absorbable. So soy foods increase the body's requirements for vitamin D. So at the same time we were getting targeted with tons of soy products as being healthy for us, it's increasing our need or the use, or it uptakes a lot of vitamin D. So, right after that whole wave of soy in the population, then you see this huge wave of people with vitamin D deficiencies, and increasing cancer due to that. So then toxic synthetic vitamin D had been added into soy milk, which doesn't do anything except for make you sicker. Let's see. Oh yeah, coconut oil in the skin is good. I love coconut oil in the skin. Yeah. And hair, yep. Yep. Yeah, so, and I actually don't mind it baked in baking goods. It's not bad. So soy foods contain a high level of aluminum. It's toxic, which is toxic to the nervous system and the kidneys. And probably the worst thing about soy was the phytic acid. So we're going to get into that next, because we're going to talk about nuts and grains and beans and stuff, and just because I want to get through actually the 4 sort of basic things that I deal with people with food. So it's fats and oils, the nuts and grains, and then bone broth and fermented foods. So the probably the very worst thing about soy is it's got huge amounts of what they call phytic acid. And that phytic acid, it reduces assimilation of calcium, magnesium, copper, iron, and zinc, all the things that are super important for normal metabolism, cellular metabolism in our bodies. So soy, those phytic acids are actually in all nuts and grains and legumes. So there's a way that traditionally people prepared, in all cultures around the world, they prepare and still do nuts, grains, seeds, and legumes. It's really, really important to break down what they call phytic acids, and some people call them anti-nutrients because they're, and I think it's just a natural protection in those grains, which is the reproductive part of the plants, right? To protect it from, viruses or whatever plagues in the plant itself. But what it does in human beings is it prevents us from absorbing minerals in our foods. So anytime you eat nuts and grains and legumes that have not been soaked and fermented, you're contributing to osteoporosis, to dental problems, gum disease, all these things. And this is so prevalent in our culture right now. I mean, who sits around and makes real sourdough bread anymore? Nobody. Well, there's some people that are doing it, so that's good. I've got some really good stuff here that I get from Oregon, where they actually sour the bread, the wheat. But so soy products, soy does not, it's not easy, it's not as easy to break down those phytic acids or those anti-nutrients with soaking or sprouting and long, slow cooking times like you can with other of the grains and nuts and stuff. There was an article that I read about soy once, and I got to find that article. So this guy was researching and looking into the whole soy story. Like, how did it come about that this soy was all of a sudden touted as like such an amazing superfood that's going to help save the planet from starvation and from the overpopulation happening and everything. And I don't remember a lot of the details about it. I just know that he kind of followed the traces of different meetings and these different corporations and stuff. And I could probably find it if people are interested and we could go through that. But basically at the end of that article, I remember he said, okay, I'm going to take you guys up to this point, but if I take you any further, I feel like I'm going to be in danger of my life. So I'm going to just leave it right here. And if you want to know the real story, you can jump off from this point and do your own research. So that was a pretty eye-opening on that whole thing with soy. So basically, looking at if you're eating processed foods or even breads, you want to look at the ingredients and make sure there's no soy in it, no canola oil or soy. Those two things are pretty much really high on the list of first things to make sure you're not eating. So soaking nuts and grains and legumes. So the best kinds of turns out, surprise, surprise, the best kinds of grains to eat and breads to have are ones that aren't whole grain. And I know I'm probably going to see a bunch of people jump off this call or the radio program right now because it seems kind of out there. But, we were all eating whole grain bread and brown rice and stuff back when we were younger, right? And when I got into acupuncture school, our teacher was like, you guys, nobody in the whole world of rice-eating cultures eats brown rice. And so they kind of drilled it into our heads that brown rice was not good. They didn't have a lot of the real science behind why it wasn't good, so I think a lot of people kept eating brown rice in our school. So one of the reason is because of those phytic acids that are in grains. They're actually in the hull of the grains. So on top of, getting fed whole grain bread that's not soured with whole grain wheats or rye or other kinds of grains, which have high amounts of phytic acids in them, they're also adding the wheat bran to foods. Because I don't know if you remember, I don't see it around as much anymore, but it used to be a big deal. Like people would, in different foods advertise, oh, it's got wheat bran in it, wheat bran added, or get this wheat bran and put it in your smoothie or, whatever. So, yeah, it turns out that wheat bran is really toxic. I'm laughing. I'm sorry. It's not funny. So, yeah, another thing to stay away from, basically. If you notice the food that if you guys give bird food to your birds, the wild birds and stuff, they sit there and peck off the outer shell of the seeds, right? They don't eat that stuff. And they will not eat GMO corn, right? Chickens even. So, there's ways you can look up online on how to soak, how long you have to soak your nuts for, or soak the nuts or seeds or grains and legumes. Basically, the bigger the thing, the longer you have to soak it. Some things need to you put salt in them to soak. But that's really super important. When my son was little, I thought I was giving him really good food, and he didn't really eat that much sugar or fruit juice or anything. But he kept getting cavities, and I couldn't figure it out until, a long time later. It was probably from all the whole wheat bread I was giving him, or the brown rice and the peanut butter that's not soaked, beforehand. And but there's a really good book called Cure Tooth Decay, Heal and Prevent Cavities with Nutrition by Ramil Nagel, and he came out with another book too later on, which I don't have. I'm going to get that one. But, I was so sad to hear just a couple months ago that he is another one to put on the list of, he wasn't a doctor, but he just died suddenly of some weird disease. And so it was really sad because he did a huge amount of work about teeth and grains and stuff and how to cook things properly and the lies about food and how to, what kinds of foods are actually, good for our teeth and what those other foods have been doing to our teeth. One of the main things that he recommends too is, going back to the oils, is cod liver oil. It's taking supplements of cod liver oil, which is something that our grandparents or our ancestors in many different parts of the world ate. They really, cod liver oil, I tell people in my practice, if there's one thing I could put everybody on, it would be cod liver oil. So it's really important for the teeth. I had one patient call me up and say, hey, my dentist wants to do a root canal on my tooth. And I was like, you need to call that dentist and cancel that appointment immediately. Do not do a root canal. And we can talk about teeth. It's maybe more in length sometime. But so I just said, just start taking, he had capsules of cod liver. I said, take 3 in the morning, 3 at night, 3 in the morning, 3 at night. Do that for a week or something. So he did it for 3 doses, and I called to check in, and he was like, oh, yeah, my toothache went away, and I canceled my appointment, and his toothache never came back. He never had to get, and that was the only thing that he really changed was taking, and then he went down to sort of not taking it and just taking it when he needs it. But, it's just amazing what they get away with, and they're such easy things to augment our diets with, and if we just can get that truth back out to people. So there's so much to be said about all these things. And then we got the bone broth. Where are we? We've got 152. Bone broth is super important for the gut and for mental health, for allergies and arthritis. And, there's an old, I think it's a Peruvian saying that, a good bowl of bone broth can bring the dead back. And I think it's pretty much true. I really believe strongly in the medicinal properties of bone broth. And of course, with a little bit of Celtic sea salt, it's so delicious. That's pretty much all you have to put in it, just the bones and the broth and the Celtic sea salt. It's really good. So we used to, in acupuncture school, that was a big thing that they always told us was a remedy for a lot of different medical problems. There's a little list of things that we would tell people to do, and bone broth was inevitably almost on everything. It's really the gelatin and the collagen that come out into the broth when you're boiling it. You add a little bit of vinegar into it, and it pulls all the minerals out. And then also the gelatin and the collagen that get released into the broth. It's just, it's just so healing. So people who have really deep-seated medical problems, bone broth is going to help like almost everything, really. Diabetes, cancer, severe gut problems. I had this one family who every single person in the family, like there's 4 kids, and one of them was autistic, one of them was Asperger's, the other one was a 12-year-old had Crohn's disease, and the little one was on his way to something horrible. They were all really, I think they were a military family, and so they probably got a lot of vaccinations. And so, but, the minute it's kind of hard to get people to start to do this stuff because we're just so removed from our ancestral way of cooking. Mexicans and people from other cultures, we're closer to that, so it's not so hard to sort of take that step back and start doing this stuff for ourselves. But people who are 2 or 3 generations out from cooking our own food, it's kind of hard. It takes a while for them to really grasp that, oh, well, maybe I do have to just stay home and make my own food. And bone broth is like so valuable and so rewarding that once people start doing it, they just like, it's amazing. It's like magic, all this stuff. The magic of our ancestors and our who are, they're here with us, rooting us on. And one of the things in Chinese medicine too that our teachers would talk about is feeding your ancestors. And so, I know in Scotland, the oatmeal is a big thing, and Ireland too. But oatmeal actually has a really huge amount of phytic acid in it, oats do. So they would take sometimes days, I think, and weeks. I was just reading something last night about that because I want to brush up on the Scottish traditions. But they, take a really long time to prepare them with soaking and drying and grinding and da-da-da. And so they really took a lot of care and time to prepare their food. And it's something that I think that when we kind of pull away or step aside from that other agenda that keeps us in slave jobs, working our little tails off all the time for money so we can pay for these packaged foods that is made in some factory by people we don't know. So somehow we're going to stand aside from that and start to, honor the traditions that have come before us and in this way. So feeding our ancestors when we look at these different ways of preparing foods in the bone broth. So maybe you can look into ask the old people in your lives or your neighbors or people who remember about how did your grandmother do that, or what kind of soups did they make and what did they make the broth out of, like fish heads and all kinds of stuff, that people today go, ooh, that sounds really gross, but it's really fun if you can start talking to the old people about how they used to do stuff. And you might even be able to bring back some recipes and some ways of doing things that are really in danger of being lost. He crossed over. We have a grandfather here, native Karuk man here who we were real close with, and he would always tell me, oh, this is the way my grandma would cook, and he loved coming to our house for dinner. And he taught us how to, we're real big salmon people here, so he taught us how to smoke the salmon. So we'd go down to the ocean in his big truck and come back with 20 salmon and have to fillet it up and smoke it and then can it. Oh man, that is so delicious. And so we used to save the heads and the gills and the fins and stuff, and we'd smoke those up too, and then make soup out of it. And he told me this one time, he's like, here, yeah, Jerry, take this home and put it in the freezer. And every time you make or when you want to make certain kinds of soup, you take these out, and you never taste anything better. And the first time I did that, I was like, blown away. It was so delicious, and this is stuff that people were going to throw away. We were at this event, and they were making fillets for people and cooking it over the fire pits and the traditional way, which is really delicious. But they were throwing all the backs and the fins and the heads away, and so we grabbed them all and brought them home and prepared them. And yeah, that was so good. I just had them all in my freezer, and people look at my freezer like, are you crazy? You have all those dead fish heads in your freezer for. But man, that makes a really good soup. So I know that in Ireland and Scotland and England, probably on the coasts and stuff, there's probably a tradition of seafood soups and fish head soup and all that. So if you could find people who know how to do that or remember, or maybe somebody remembers their grandmother doing it or something, you want to really kind of try to get that down and write it down and start playing around with it, because feeding your ancestors is a really big part of Chinese medicine too, and I'm sure all cultural, traditions that are earth-based cultures, tribal people from the earth, know the importance of feeding our ancestors. So when you're making your broth, I usually make chicken broth. If I roast a chicken, or even if I eat chicken out, I always save the bones. I stick them in a plastic bag in my purse, bring them home, stick them in the freezer with the other bags. And so when I get a whole bunch in the freezer, then I just put them all on a pot and on the stove with some good old Celtic sea salt, and then I have it, and then I freeze it and put it in my freezer, and then I have it there for when I want to make a soup or some rice or need something to water down something that I'm making. So that way you can get that bone broth and the gelatin and collagen in different kinds of foods that you're making. If you guys have any questions, you better tell Lizzie, because I'm not seeing any questions. Anyway, so the last thing that I wanted to talk about today was fermented foods. So my husband's from Germany, and he's Schwäbisch, and so we've been making sauerkraut, and that's fun. Sauerkraut is a traditional food that's got a lot of probiotics and enzymes in them, so which is really, really important, anti-cancer, and food that, with all the damage that has been done to us through industrial foods, the sauerkraut and fermented vegetables, also fermented milk products that were real big in Africa and in European countries, mostly ate there. A lot of the dairy products were fermented, and so you're getting all that real natural probiotics and enzymes that help you digest your food. And so there's just such a huge rise of digestive problems in our culture today because of the denatured foods, that it's just one of the super important things to get back to. I a lot of times recommend people supplement with capsules or something of enzymes and probiotics, especially at the beginning when they're starting to heal, because the foods is probably not going to be enough for a lot of like the IBS people and irritable bowel and Crohn's disease. But you also want to start introducing the food. Yeah, Red, I do. We make, I even grow my own cabbages. I grew all my cabbages last year and they turned out really good. We live in a place where it's really hot and dry in the summer, so I had to shade everything. So yeah, and so this year what I did was I cut, we harvested all the cabbages, and then I had a little sauerkraut party. And I have this big, huge crock that I bought. It's from Poland. It's so cool. It's got a moat around it. So it lets, when it's fermenting, it lets the gases escape, but it won't let air back in. So it's really good. So yeah, it's a lot of work. You got to clean it and then cut it and the right way and put the right amount of salt in, and so yeah, we'll have kraut parties where people come over and we all just try not to talk too much, because actually we did that once where we were talking about different things and having fun and stuff, but the kraut, we had to throw part of it out because it's a living being. So when you're making it, you got to be really respectful and really focus on what you're doing. It's like a spiritual practice, really, of inviting this living being into your life. And so it's really cool. It just, this type of information for me is just so key to getting us through this period that we're in right now, this transition that we're going through. of getting back to natural, you know. And it's not that hard, you know. If anybody already cooks a little bit, you know, it's not really that hard to step over and start, you know, just cooking a little different. You know, maybe it might be, you know, 1 or 2 hours more a week, which, you know, if you're retired or that's their job in the family is to cook, it just takes a while to transition over to doing things a little different. And and the other thing is that, you know, when you start looking for, maybe you don't have time to cook, but there's people around that are actually making businesses cooking traditional foods. And you know, you could find people, if you work and you buy your food out anyway, you might as well look online and see if someone's making food around you that wants to sell it. You know, in Mexico, it's really common that women make food and the neighbors just kind of know that they make extra every day from their family and they have it for sale, and you just go over to their house with your jar or your container and then you you know, tell them you want some food and they'll sell you some of their food. It's cool. So yeah, I guess maybe we're kind of coming to, let's see, it's about 2:06. Oh, okay. Any fermented dairy like yogurt? Yes. Oh, that's a really good question. Thank you. So I do actually. And the thing about dairy products is you want to get raw milk. That would probably be the next thing on my list if I had remembered about it. But yeah, so raw milk products milk got to start, let's see, they started pasteurizing milk because kind of they had to, because back when, you know, when there's like, I guess it was in the late 1800s or something, don't quote me on that, but anyway, in New York, there was a whole they started having these big, huge dairies, right, where they had like, you know, 30 or 40 or 100 dairy cows, and they were throwing this slop in there for them to eat that was the dregs from breweries and I forgot what they call them, but where they make whiskey and stuff. So all the grains that were fermented, and they would throw them into the cows, and then the cows would just like eat this slop, which wasn't their natural diet. And then they were standing up to their udders in their own feces. It was so dirty that people started dying from the milk. So they had to start pasteurizing it, which is boiling it to kill the bacteria that might be in the milk. So when they start pasteurizing the milk, they kill all the natural enzymes and I guess, yeah. So the enzymes that are naturally in the milk to help the human body, or the people's bodies break it down, is killed through the pasteurization process. So are all the probiotics that they say that's in milk and in commercial yogurt that you buy in the store. Doesn't have any probiotics in it unless they added them in, because it's all dead when they pasteurize it. It's totally dead. So a lot of people have problems digesting milk because, you know, it doesn't have the natural helper elements in there, which is the enzymes specific to digesting milk proteins and the probiotics. So most people who say that they're allergic to milk or something, they might not really be allergic to milk. They might just be sensitive to it because it's pasteurized milk. And so if you try to find some local farmer that has some raw milk, most people who try raw milk, who have problems with milk, can drink raw milk, and myself included. I do have some patients who just can't even do that, but that's pretty rare. So the yogurt, if you want to really eat yogurt that's really has beneficial, stuff in there for you, you have to make it with raw milk. And so I make yogurt with it, and I make kefir too. Okay, can you flash that question up again? Let me see, maybe it's in the chat room here. About cheese or something? Oh, okay, no, that's not it. Let's see. Main room. Come on. Was a nut. Yeah, that pasteur guy. Okay, here it is. Let's see. That. Have you heard? Oh, shoot, it just went away again. Where is that? No. Something about cheese that sits around in the gut or something. Was it raw cheese, or what kind of cheese was that? I haven't really heard that story. But, the dairy industry comes up with a lot of stuff. Do you make any from it? No. I make kefir also. So, yeah, fermented foods and that. Sits around in the large intestine for years and can lead to carcinogenic issues. Cheese once eaten in the large intestine. Yeah, so cheese, probably might be true for pasteurized. Cheese that's made out of pasteurized milk. Because you don't have the enzymes to break it down. Yeah, that's the question. So, and it's kind of hard to find raw cheese actually, because even raw cheese they've heated up somewhat. So that's probably what that is. And so the other thing is too is that when they do these studies, they'll make all these rats just eat cheese, for whatever 6 weeks or something, and oh wow, these rats all died. Well, in our traditional cultures, we didn't just eat like one thing. So, our ancestors knew this, and our grandmothers knew this, that we're not going to just feed the people crackers and cheese for days on end. That's why they took so much care to make foods that everybody loved, and it was balanced out, and they knew about, we need to be eating more soups. In America, people really don't eat enough soups, and a lot of gut problems are caused to not eating enough soup because, like this, I was in a Thai restaurant, which they use soy oil, but sometimes I just have to eat out. But anyway, oh no, not really. About Lizzie. You need to go to sleep, sweetie. Thank you. So the guy at the Thai restaurant told me that, yeah, soup is so important because it's like when you have a blender, like your stomach is like a blender, and it's going to blend up all your food and digest it and stuff. So if you put too much food in that blender with not enough moisture in there, then it's going to get all clogged up and you're not going to be able to digest it. So that's why it's in their culture, they always say it's really important to eat soup at almost every meal, or some kind of hot beverage, hot, like bone broth basically, to help with to keep the gut in a good way. Thank you so much, Lizzie. I appreciate it. Coming on the call with me. It was nice to have you in the back there for my first show here. But, so, yeah, okay, so fermented foods, yeah. So I'll just tell you a little bit about me. How I got into this was that I grew up in a place in the Bay Area near San Francisco where there was a lot of industry. There was oil refineries and chemical refineries and stuff, and I got really toxed out when I was little, and I always had stomach problems my whole life. So when I got to be older, I think I was already in my 40s, early 40s or something, when I realized that I needed to do something more about my gut. Okay. Sounds good, Lizzie. So I went on this diet called the GAPS diet, GAPS, and it's gut and psychology. So maybe next time we can talk about that. Or I know what I want to tell people. If you have something that you, like an issue that you want me to focus on sometime, You can private chat me or something in the chat room, because if you just put it in the public one, I probably won't see it. So if you private chat me, I can, we can do a show about a couple of different specific problems and ways that we can, use lifestyle and food to help fix it. So that's an idea. So anyway, I think I'm getting kind of close here, Gaz. Let's see. Oh, is that Nadine? Oh. Okay, cool. Okay. Okay. Okay, well, Gaz is chatting me up here on the Skype, and I guess you can't hear him, but we'll, I think I'm going to just end for now, and thank you so much for being on and for all the support from the People for People group here, and I'm really excited about hanging out with you guys more, and so yeah, so if you do want me to focus on one thing, a certain thing that's wrong with you or one of your family members, keeping in mind this is not, I'm not diagnosing anybody. I'm just going to give some helpful hints, okay? Because I don't want anybody to sue me for, whatever. We live in a sue-happy country here where I'm at. So anyhow, thanks again. And I just really want to give thanks to all of our ancestors who passed on such really amazing inspiration and love and good food and so yeah, thanks again, guys, and I'll see you next time, or we'll be chatting next time. Have a good evening.
More about gel coat.
When the fourth round would...
Don't you call in the... More importantly, he knew what he was talking about.
Oh, does it look good already? Okay.
Jumbo Scampi for limited.
All for a price that will make you...
How the hell am I supposed to pay?
This is Rick Simpson, and you're listening to People for People Radio, the voice of truth in Scotland.